Janel, would you have any guesses as to the top reason why investors did not want to invest in Hustle Fund back in 2017?
Okay, guessing that it has something to do with the fact that you are publicly obsessed with minivans and Elizabeth is obsessed with hippos.
Yes, those are very good guesses, but actually, the top pushback was back in 2017. A lot of investors did not like the fact that we were a fully remote VC firm. And believe it or not, during those pre-pandemic days, this was a completely foreign concept to be doing venture or even to do a lot of startups in this kind of a fashion. No one really understood that.
So fast forward 5.5 years, we're a fully remote team. 33 members of Hustle Fund in 7 cities across the world.
Kind of wild. And it's sort of working too, right?
I'd say so.
Hey founders, welcome back to Uncapped Notes. If you're new here, my name is Eric. I'm one of the co-founders and general partners here at Hustle Fund, which is a venture capital firm with over $130 million under management, joined by my lovely co-host Janel, our head of business development and partnerships.
On this channel, we try to leverage our insights and experiences as past founders and as venture capitalists to democratize capital, knowledge, and networks.
So in today's episode, Janelle, we're going to be talking about all things remote. What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And what do we do specifically at Hustle Fund to make all of this work across our 33 teammates who are working from their homes, largely?
So Eric, when we were discussing how to concoct this episode, we talked about 3 main benefits of remote teams. Mm-hmm. 1, you have access to global talent.
That's right.
2, there's a cost savings associated with being fully remote. And the 3rd, flexibility.
Yes.
So let's dive into all 3 of those.
Okay. Maybe we can begin with global talent access. I guess back in the pre-pandemic days when everything was so focused on Silicon Valley, the belief was that you need to recruit, retain, house everyone in just this really small area of the world. But clearly there's talented people all over the place. And this is probably my favorite aspect of having a remote team, right, Janelle, is the fact that we're not constrained by just location. If you want to live in a different continent for some period of time, or maybe you're actually going to be hiking the Appalachian Trail or something like that at some point, or the John Muir Trail or one of those, right? You can actually do the work wherever you feel like doing it, and it won't really hamper us. So I guess in addition to just having a team that's remote where you can have access to pretty much anyone, I'm not going to deny that one big benefit for founders is also cost savings, right? I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, we happen to be sitting here together in an office space today, but normally we do all of this remote. And with that, with the people working from their homes or coffee shops, you save on office space, rent, utilities. So all of these costs that can pile up just by getting everyone together, some major savings for founders.
Yeah, certainly. And, not going to lie, that quality of life and cost per living is very different from outside of Silicon Valley. It can vary within the United States, but there's some places that are far cheaper than living in the United States too. So, access to talent and also access to talent that is just higher value is also a huge benefit as part of this cost savings as well. I guess that 3rd benefit is really about flexibility. Now, this isn't going to work for, I think, every single kind of company around the world, but at least for us at Hustle Fund and many of the startups that we've seen and support, it's not necessarily about having a certain number of hours per week. We care more about output. This is what I love. I'm very involved with my family's life. I have hobbies. You certainly are a very, very active person. And it's kind of not a very big deal for us, when we need to move around, take vacations, go on trips, because we kind of trust each other and having that accountability within ourselves that our output's going to be good.
Yeah, this reminds me when the team was in Bend for our offsite this winter, and we all went up to Mount Bachelor for a day of skiing, and some of the team stayed in the lodge to get some work done, and you said to me, oh my gosh, Janelle, this is such a great place to work. If I lived here, I would be doing what you do. Come up here, ski for a little bit, come in, take meetings, get work done, go out and ski a few laps, head back down the mountain when you need to. And so having that flexibility, well, 1, I think it keeps motivation high.
Yeah, that's exactly, by the way, the lifestyle I want, which is hour skiing in the morning, work at the lodge, eat my lunch, another hour skiing right after lunch, and then just work until I need to complete my things. And it really works. I mean, we don't see any disruption from the variance or the differences in our lifestyles that we have. We just continue to ship and do the things that we do at the deadlines that we set for ourselves, and it seems to work. Right? But I understand if it's not for every kind of company type, but it really works well for us at Hustle Fund.
So there are some potential downsides or
For sure.
challenges associated with running remote teams, but we have some ideas on how you can work around these challenges.
Yeah, certainly. So maybe we can sort of start with like communication challenges. We are a big team, at least for us, 34 people-ish, 33, 34 people all around the globe. So when the sun sets here in California, I've learned many times over that the sun rises in Singapore, where many of our other teammates are. And man, those time zones can be pretty tricky at times.
When I am collaborating with someone on the team in Singapore, I do have to think ahead about when I'm responding to or making requests of those team members so that you don't have this constant 24-hour delay. That's a challenge, but I think there's some ways around it.
What other kinds of challenges have we encountered in this model?
Well, so something that I think we're all mindful of is the potential for isolation.
Yeah.
Yesterday, when I met Kara at a coffee shop because we're going to go visit an event venue, it was really nice to see her face, but we don't get that in-person together time on a day-to-day basis. So you do run the risk of feeling a little bit like alone.
I think this is actually a great lead into the third thing that we identified when we were writing this episode earlier too, Janelle, which is I think this is a particularly difficult model for remote teams, especially if you're newer in your career. Let's say you're like a fresh college graduate. I'm just sharing my own lived experience here, which is when I got out of college, I worked at this great big company called Intuit. I had to go to Mountain View, California every day to go do my work. But I also had the benefit of great managers, their managers, other kinds of mentors. And because I didn't know anything, I didn't have any mental models of what good work looked like. These people actually took time to actually show me how to write an email, put together a deck, or even just enjoying the extemporaneous conversations to learn from them, listening in on their calls and so forth. So if you're going to be isolated, I kind of feel like it works when you've been a little bit further in your careers, but this is probably the one that we haven't quite cracked for like our younger employees too, Janelle, which is it's really hard if you're just getting started, being by yourself at home, trying to reinvent some of these circles of support too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of founders watching this would agree that you really want your team members to be self-starters, really good at kind of figuring things out. And when you're early in your career, I think I sometimes take for granted that I probably acquired some of those skills being around my team members on a day-to-day basis.
You're right. And like coming back to that first challenge around communication, I tend to find people who are good at over-communicating and saying like, and are a little bit more proactive about saying, I need help with this thing. They tend to thrive pretty well in these kinds of environments. Right. But to be fair, when I first got started, Janelle, in my career, I was afraid to ask for help. If I weren't actually in a situation where people could walk by my cubicle at the time, and see like, hey, you seem to be frustrated or like looking sad or something. And then they would stop and actually proactively help me. It took me a while to get over that confidence barrier to say like, I need some help too.
Maybe we need to do an episode on modeling, right? Because I actually think that's something we do well as a team and that you do well in particular when you have people in leadership positions who model these types of behaviors. But maybe a whole nother episode.
I thought you were talking about my Zoolander modeling days.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
So we talked about some of the challenges, but, I got to give us a little bit of credit here at Hustle Fund, Janelle. I think that we have done a decent job of navigating these challenges. You want to sort of talk a little bit about some of the things that have worked well for us as well.
Yeah, so in terms of isolation, building camaraderie, we do a lot of things really well. One of the things that I love is we have a shout-outs channel on Slack, and so it's nothing but good vibes when someone has helped you out with something that day, or you're really impressed with some of the work that somebody's doing. You can have the opportunity to give them a shout-out. The entire team throws an emoji up there or some sort of comment, and it makes you feel seen, it makes you feel valued. It's an easy thing to do, and I mean that channel is active every single day.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite cultural things about us at Hustle Fund, which is we do have that shout out Slack channel. It doesn't matter if it's like a big help or a small help. We're really good about just expressing gratitude, and it is a dopamine hit when we see all the team kind of come up together and say like, yeah, we see what you just did there. A really good one. The thing that I think we also do really well, and this is, to be fair, a relatively recent phenomenon at Hustle Fund, is our culture around documentation. So when you're working with teams and you have to do this remotely, naturally a lot of decisions are going to be made asynchronously. And we've developed a system that actually our entrepreneur in residence, Tanuka, has put together. It's called Company OS. Do you want to share a little bit about the general concept behind Company OS?
This kind of started over 2 years ago. We were documenting every meeting so that we'd be able to go back and have a record of decisions made, discussions we've had, etc. But it has since evolved into, since we're all working on different projects in our separate places, can you at any time be like, oh, hey, I haven't heard what's going on with partnerships recently, or I know we're about a month out from Camp Hustle, and I should probably check on what I need to be doing in marketing. It helps us all have, organization around projects that are ongoing, the major efforts. I think one of the biggest things that we've done is implement a way of tracking our big goals as a team and being able to see progress for each term on how those projects are going.
Spot on. And this has been a really, really great benefit for our team in involving this into a dashboard, like our priorities, all documented. But also, for me, it's almost like a recipe book as well, of just like, oh, Janelle has created these, what we call rhythms around like how she checks in with certain partners or things that she does when she's planning like a major event. It's almost like these things I can just sort of copy and use for my own projects too. I gotta say, Janelle, that maybe this is like the last thing that we've done really well navigating these challenges, especially, is even though we do a good job remote, I still get kind of itchy to have a little of that in-person time. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what we do to sort of scratch that itch too?
Yeah, so we brought this up earlier, but we do offsites 3 times a year. So we bring together the core team, we pick a spot, we usually plan for 4 to 5 days where we're all typically staying in the same house or a few houses, and we'll have part of every day that's designed around big thinking on where we're going, what we're doing, what we're working on, and then part of the day on fun things like...
We did e-foiling once. That was a really fun activity. Elizabeth is oddly obsessed with that motorized surfboards. Crazy hikes, actually. One time when we were in Vietnam, remember, we had that rainy hike.
That was awesome. It was downpouring, but I think we all had a fabulous time. We went skiing, snowboarding, day at the mountain. So yeah, there's always some fun planned into the offsites.
Yeah, and this is more of a hustle fun stylistic thing, so it's not us imposing on you. But one thing that I think is good about our culture is it's not centered around drinking or like hardcore partying late into the night. It's up to you to define what your culture ultimately is going to look like. But what we find is that through these kinds of wholesome activities, it just produces a much more greater feeling of safety for me as well. Just like, there's no expectation for me to be like extra macho or something by drinking a bunch of shots. It's a little bit hard to get everyone involved in that as well.
Yeah, and if we're doing a team thing and I start brushing my teeth at 9 p.m., nobody makes fun of me because I'm going to bed early.
Well, the last time that you did do that, maybe 1 or 2 people, probably myself, did make fun of you a little bit. But it's more like sibling-like ribbing.
So ultimately, Eric, both in-person teams and remote teams can work for founders watching the show.
Yeah, I mean, remote has been working really well for us at Hustle Fund, and it is worth considering for your team how you want to think about this design, whether doing it in person or remote. And hopefully that this episode provided a little bit of context on some of the things that you expect to make it work really well, but also the challenges that are real, to make sure that you can put mechanisms in place to make sure that there's good fostering of stronger connections and collaboration. Founders out there, if you like this episode of Uncapped Notes, we actually have a ton of advice and content that we're constantly producing. We highly recommend that you check out our blog for founders, as well as our newsletter called The Founder Playbook. You can check it out at hustlefund.vc/blog-founders. And we'll see you at the next Uncapped Notes episode.